This is a Doc Talk podcast short with Dr. Jenna Burton and me, James Pikeway.
You were saying that there's quite a bit of flu coming back into the clinic.
Yeah, there has. Hasn't really stopped, James.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the flu season now just is, as you said, it's just ongoing.
I mean, it's definitely worth getting your flu jab. So even though there's been two strains in particular that have really wiped its way through the UAE, and there was an influenza A strain, then there was a strain with influenza A and B together, and they have made people really poorly. But if we catch them in time, we get them on an antiviral, they can bounce back within 48 hours really quite well. But it's been surprising how much of it I've seen. That and strep throat too.
Strep throat?
Which was really going through the UK as well over Christmas time.
How do you get strep throat?
It's like with everything, it's just sort of like small moisture droplets that are in the air, etc.
So when someone sneezes, doesn't cover their mouth.
Sometimes it's that, kissing, even being in close contact when you're talking, etc. Also sharing things. I mean, my daughter's a real fan of sharing her ice cream lollipops with the dogs, which I'm always, actively
is it sharing
encouraging
or
her.
the dogs get it? It's like
A mixture of the two, but sometimes she's like, oh, well, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Neve, that has to go in the bin. But sharing foods and items too. Buffet areas can be.
All right.
I bet you never go to a buffet because you're so OCD.
I do like a buffet, but it just depends
Where
it is. And I don't know. I mean, usually a buffet is really expensive. And I kind of go, the food's usually just kind of And so you spend a whole bunch of money for just food that's And then I kind of go, well, I could go to a restaurant and order off the menu and probably get better food. And I think when you go to a buffet, my feeling is, so you spend whatever it is, and you feel like you have to eat that value of the food off that buffet.
It just definitely encourages overeating,
So
for sure.
I just kind of, buffet breakfast, all right, you just go and get things.
James.
But they're, that was what I loved in Thailand, because I was going and getting the soup for breakfast, because when in Thailand, eat like a Thai, and those soups are just phenomenal.
Yeah, they are.
And
so good for you as well.
yeah. And so they were always kind of like, oh, you want soup? And they said, what do you want? I said, make the one you would have. And they go, okay. And the guy, or the lady would put it all together. It was just like, oh, there we go. This is great.
But you know what's the joy about a buffet, right? So when you're in Thailand, you can order that soup, but then you can get like some crazy scrambled egg on the side, bit of cheese, some cucumbers. You can mix some crazy items you'd never put together.
Yeah.
And that is the joy of a buffet.
It is. I find dinner buffets, it doesn't really matter where you go. It's always the same stuff.
There's always pasta.
Yeah, there's always that thing. I mean, then you can get a roast. And I think there's sometimes I like going to, it has to be a very particular one. So I love going to the revolving restaurant at the Galleria in Dubai.
I didn't even know there was one.
There is. It's in the Hyatt Galleria. I think it's Hyatt Galleria Hotel on down by the water. So if you're right down by the Zabil, the old Zabil area, and or the old palace area, and what's the tunnel down there called? There's a tunnel, but it's in the old part, which is now new because there's a whole bunch of building.
Yeah, it's all being done up.
But the revolving restaurant's still there in this hotel. It's got one of the first it's got the first ice rink in Dubai there, I think. I think it was before Al Nasser. And so it's right down on the water.
So we need to do that. That sounds amazing.
So I like going there because they've got oysters, and so we just don't do a roast at home. So I sometimes like to go for those kinds of things. Like there's food that I just don't make. So if I don't make it and someone does it pretty good, I'm going to go for that.
And but obviously as well, like when you go to these places, even if it's not a buffet, sometimes the hygiene can be questionable, having worked in kitchens when I was younger. And that's where things get cooked and spread. And but what do? You can't not go to these places. So ultimately the spread of disease is always going to be present, always.
Yeah, so we got to deal with it. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing they're seeing a lot of is general colitis, gastritis, like gastroenteritis, basically.
Oh.
So a lot of people, especially, during Ramadan, and everyone would have iftars together.
Right.
There was a huge surge in gastroenteritis because people would be going to more buffet-style restaurants. And so sadly, you did find, and often they were outdoors, they were on the beach, etc. I found a lot of patients were coming with sort of upset tummies.
Well, okay.
But again, as I say, it's not something you can avoid because it's a social thing. It's a cultural thing, bringing everybody together. But the consequence is that sadly you are more likely to get an upset tummy from an environment like that.
So there you go. So just be aware.
Yes, generally.
Just keep hydrated. Be aware and keep hydrated.
Well, if you do get gastroenteritis, then one of the most important things is staying hydrated. One of the biggest killers in the world is diarrhea.
Yeah.
Because especially in third world countries, because they get really bad diarrhea and they don't have the means to hydrate themselves afterwards. They don't have the ability to get the appropriate electrolytes afterwards. So diarrhea can actually be really quite serious. For you and I, we don't even think about it because water is so easily accessible. But yeah, make sure you stay really well hydrated. Use your electrolytes, electrolyte drinks, Diarrhelite, etc. Gatorade, one of those. And that's a sort of a way of coping with it.
Good advice. I actually think, generally speaking, people are underhydrated anyway. Most cases, working indoors, we just take it for granted. Oh, I'm not really thirsty. And I think people generally, that's one of the big problems in industrialized societies is just dehydration.
Do you know, my mum contacted me in a panic the other day. She said, Jenna, I went for my blood test. She had some osteoarthritis and there was a question mark, was it rheumatism? And it wasn't. But anyway, as part of the general workup, they decided to check her renal functions, her kidney functions. And it came back that her kidneys were really struggling. She's like, what do you think it is? What do you think it is? I was like, Mum, when was the last time you drank a glass of water? She's like, well, I don't, do I? You know that, but I drink loads of tea and I drink my wine at night. I was like, it doesn't count because tea's got caffeine. So what you take in, it kind of also encourages you to excrete. And likewise, I mean, alcohol is dehydrating at its very core. So anyway, I was like, they're going to repeat it. So before your next test, hydrate. Take a big bottle of water and just say, right, it's a medicine. I've got to drink it by a certain time. Then take another one. I've got to drink it by a certain time. Just get it down. If you need to add a bit of juice, whatever, fine. But just make sure you drink it. And then her kidney function was completely fine on the second test. But that's it. If you don't hydrate your kidneys, they can't function.
Yeah. So I think this is a big problem.